And now, I want to open this sermon by telling my very favorite Zen parable, which I have told you before, but I checked, and by my calculations, it's been like 2.5 years since I told this story. So it's been a minute, and it goes like this. A man is walking across a field outside his village in the mountains. He's just strolling along, enjoying the beautiful blue sky and the warmth of the day. And out of the corner of his eye, he realizes that a tiger is stalking him through the woods, edging the field. So he's walking a little faster now, keeping his eye on the tiger, and the field is on a cliff, and it ends in a steep drop-off with a ravine below. And he walks as casually as he can to the edge of the cliff and sees that there's a vine leading over the side of the cliff. Suddenly, the tiger bursts out of the woods, racing towards the man. He does the only thing he can think to do, which was grab the vine, jump over the edge of the cliff, holding on, thinking that maybe he will climb down the rope to the bottom and escape in the ravine below. Hanging on to the rope, he looks down and sees another tiger at the bottom of the ravine, pacing back and forth, looking up, just waiting for him. So he's hanging onto the rope, dangling over the edge of the cliff, the tiger above, the tiger below. He isn't sure what to do when 3 little brown mice crawl out onto the vine at the top and begin gnawing on the vine. So now he looks left and he looks right, the tiger above and the tiger below and the mice gnawing on the vine, and he sees a wild strawberry growing out of the side of the hill. He picks the strawberry and pops it into his mouth, and a smile beams on his face. Ah, delicious, he sighs. I don't know exactly what a prayer is, writes the poet Mary Oliver in our reading today. I do know how to pay attention. Would any of us have the presence of mind to savor the strawberry, to pay attention in such a moment? And yet, we do live our lives between the 2 tigers of desire and death. And whatever moment we are in, this is the moment where life is happening, and this is the moment where strawberries are happening too. Every day, writes the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh in The Miracle of Mindfulness, every day we are engaged in a miracle which we don't even recognize. A blue sky, white clouds, green leaves, the black, curious eyes of a child, our own 2 eyes, all is a miracle. It was the life work of Thich Nhat Hanh, or Brother Tay as he was known to his students, to help humanity to connect to the miracle of the ordinary moment through a practice he called mindfulness. In mindfulness, he believed we could find joy, peace, and healing. In mindfulness, we could find awareness of our own suffering, but also compassion for the suffering of others. In mindfulness, we could connect with and heal our earth. Thich Nhat Hanh was born in central Vietnam, in Hue Province, in 1926. At a very young age, his life's desire became clear to him. He saw an image of the Buddha for the first time, and he determined to become a monk. He told the story to Oprah Winfrey in a 2010 interview. He said, I was 7 or 8. The Buddha in the image was sitting on the grass, very peaceful, smiling. He said, I was impressed. Around me, people were not like that, and so I had the desire to be like him. He says, I nourished that desire until the age of 16, when I had the permission of my parents to go and ordain as a monk. After many years of study at different temples and schools, he was ordained as a monk in 1949. But his vision of Buddhism set him apart from his peers from the very beginning. The job of a monk, as Thich Nhat Hanh understood it, he said, was to have time to practice for your transformation and healing, and after that to help with the transformation and healing of other people. The purpose of the contemplative life, as Thich Nhat Hanh saw it, was not to remove oneself from the world, but to better prepare oneself to engage with the world as a healer. and he called this idea engaged Buddhism. As a young monk working to revive Buddhism in Vietnam, he intended to remain connected to the modern world. Thus, he left the Buddhist academy where he had been training because it would not teach modern subjects. And he moved to Saigon, and he enrolled in Saigon University, where he studied science, and where he was the editor of a humanist journal. He was one of the first monks to ever ride a bicycle, we are told. He was crafting a vision of a more unified, a more humanistic, a more scientific Buddhism, and this vision drew some disfavor from the other monks. In 1960, he was teaching a series of classes on Buddhism in Saigon. The religious authorities abruptly canceled it. They did not like it. So in response, he went abroad in 1960 to study comparative religion at Princeton on a Fulbright scholarship. He spent several years lecturing on Buddhism at American universities like Cornell and others. When he returned to Vietnam in 1964, the war was raging, and he turned and devoted his life to peace work. He organized a group of neutral peace workers among the Buddhist monks, and they would go out into the countryside and they would build schools and they would build health clinics and they would repair destroyed villages, and they didn't take sides among the combatants. His associates also began publishing essays and poems about peace and calling for peace. And this drew the hostility of the authorities, for whom peace was a code word for communism. In fact, Tay and his fellow Buddhists drew suspicion from all sides. By refusing to pick sides, everyone became angry at them. In 1966, while Thich Nhat Hanh was back in America on a tour lecturing on Buddhism, he was refused permission to re-enter Vietnam by the government, and thus began a 39-year period of exile. Thich Nhat Hanh would not return to Vietnam until 2005. He related the pain of this experience of exile in his 2010 Oprah interview. He said, "I was angry, worried, sad, hurt. In the first year, I dreamed almost every night of going home. I was climbing a beautiful hill, very green, very happy, and then suddenly I woke up and found that I was in exile. So my practice," he says, "was to get in touch with the trees, the birds, the flowers, the children, the people of the West, and make them my community. And because of that practice," he says, "I found home outside of home, and after a year, the dream stopped." While in America, Thich Nhat Hanh continued to advocate for an end to the war. He befriended Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and in one of their face-to-face meetings, he convinced Dr. King to come out publicly against the war in Vietnam. This was 1967, an incredibly momentous moment and an enormous turning point in Dr. King's work. In return, in 1967, King nominated Thich Nhat Hanh for a Nobel Peace Prize. In 1969, Thich Nhat Hanh led the Buddhist peace delegation to the Paris peace talks. After the war, he was still unable to return to his home, this time denied permission by the North Vietnamese government. He still attempted to promote peace in his country through writing. So in 1975, he wrote his foundational text, The Miracle of Mindfulness, which he actually wrote primarily for the Vietnamese peace workers who he knew back home, because the work that they were doing was incredibly dangerous, and he knew they faced death almost every day. And so he wrote this book to support them, to provide peaceful practices for them, to give them resilience. And this book, The Miracle of Mindfulness, became his most enduring work, a worldwide bestseller, laying out all the basic tenets of his thought and practice. And from that time on, he turned his attention to spreading his vision of a Buddhism rooted in mindfulness practices throughout the West and the rest of the world. In 1982, Thich Nhat Hanh founded the Plum Village Sangha. Sangha is a word for a Buddhist community in the south of France, and it became the largest Sangha in the Western world, drawing more than 10,000 visitors a year just to the location. Reportedly, over 75,000 people a year would participate in different ways. For the next 40 years, he taught Buddhism and his practice of mindfulness to people from all walks of life. He wrote over 100 books, and he became one of the most important shapers of Buddhism as it is understood and practiced in the West. Indeed, Thich Nhat Hanh's concept and practice of mindfulness has become ubiquitous, spreading far and wide beyond Buddhism. A Guardian article notes that Nhat Hanh's ideas have been incorporated into cognitive behavioral therapy in modern mental health care. They have been received as entrepreneurial wisdom by the CEOs of Silicon Valley. Police officers train on mindfulness. School children learn about mindfulness. According to a Time magazine article, Christiana Figueres, the former executive secretary of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, boy, that rolls right off the tongue. Let me try that again. Christiana Figueres, the former executive secretary of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, said in 2016 that she could not have pulled off the Paris Climate Agreement, she says, if I had not been accompanied by the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh. Time magazine went on to note that today mindfulness is a $1.1 billion industry. And one survey found that 35% of employers have incorporated mindfulness into the workplace. Janet Gyatso, a professor of Buddhist studies at Harvard, says that Thich Nhat Hanh has offered the West a simple version of Buddhism, but she says not an oversimplified version. The basic philosophy, she says, is mindfulness and compassion, the same philosophy as the Dalai Lama. So mindfulness is at the heart of Thich Nhat Hanh's practice, and it is a practice. He emphasizes it is not a theoretical concept. It is not a philosophy. It is like a muscle that one exercises that allows one to keep one's awareness in the present, focused on the moment one is experiencing, rather than allowing the self to be dispersed between the past, the present, the future, filled with anxieties, filled with worries, filled with regrets. Mindfulness really is as simple as paying attention to what one is doing, to the moment of now. So simple, so difficult. He begins teaching the practice of mindfulness with breath meditation. One closes one's eyes, relaxes the body, and follows the course of the breath in and out of the body with the attention, and that's it. Close the eyes, follow the breath. Do that for 20 or 30 minutes. When thoughts arise, you note the thought. You don't judge it. You don't try and make it go away. You just note it, and then you turn your attention back to the breath. That's the basic practice. Eventually, the goal, according to Thich Nhat Hanh, is for mindfulness to sort of permeate one's life, and then anything can become a meditation. Thich Nhat Hanh likes to talk about walking meditation, one of his favorite practices, which is just walking slowly. Not so slowly that people around you start to look at you or you get in anyone's way, but just walking slowly and paying attention to each individual step. There is tea meditation, where he and his fellow monks enjoy a single cup of tea with mindfulness, savoring and fully experiencing each sip. It takes about an hour for the monks to drink a single cup of tea with mindfulness. Thich Nhat Hanh explained, when he is doing tea meditation, I am real, and the tea is real. I'm in the present. I don't think of the past. I don't think of the future. There's a real encounter between me and the tea, and peace and happiness and joy are possible during this time that I drink. So the point is to fully inhabit our lives with our own consciousness, our own being, whatever we are doing. And Oprah asked him, well, what if we've got bills to pay? We've got things to do. And Thich Nhat Hanh said, there is a time to pay the bills, but not before or after that time. And then when you pay the bills, pay the bills. Do it mindfully. Thich Nhat Hanh said, when you wash the dishes with all of your attention focused on that task. Do the thing not to get it over with, fully present, inhabiting the moment you're experiencing. He says when we are mindful, things are done with care, attention, appreciation, gratitude, and an expansive sense of time. We are unhurried. We are at peace. And one of the purposes of this is to open us up to those ordinary miracles that are happening in the present moment, the ordinary miracles of life that are all around us all the time. So Thich Nhat Hanh famously described how to mindfully eat an orange. And I'm going to read you this description, which goes like this. He says, when you look deeply at an orange, you realize that an orange or any fruit is nothing less than a miracle. Try it, he says. Take an orange and hold it in your palm. Breathe in and out slowly and look at it as if you were seeing it for the first time. When you look at it deeply, he says, you will be able to see many wonderful things. The sun shining, the rain falling on the orange tree, the orange blossoms, the tiny fruit appearing on the branch, the color of the fruit changing from green to yellow, and then the full-grown orange. Right? The whole history of the tree lives in the fruit. Now slowly begin to peel it, he says. Smell the wonderful scent of the orange peel. Break off sections and put it into your mouth. Taste its wonderful juice. He says the orange tree has taken 3, 4, or 6 months to make such an orange for you. It is a miracle. Now the orange is ready, and it says, I am here for you. But if you are not present, you will not hear it. When you are not looking at the orange in the present moment, then the orange is not present either. Being fully present while eating an orange, says Thich Nhat Hanh, is a delightful experience. So when we are mindfully present to the ordinary miracles in our lives, we can begin to sense the enoughness of our lives in a new way. We're less dissatisfied, less filled with our cravings. Thich Nhat Hanh notes often how so many people in the West have so very, very much comparatively, and yet are unhappy and dissatisfied because they are looking for satisfaction in places where it cannot be found. In Plum Village, he says, we do not have personal bank accounts, we do not have our own cars, we do not have phones, but we laugh all day long. Now, mindfulness is not supposed to be a task or a chore, but a source of joy and delight. In her 2010 interview, Oprah asked Thich Nhat Hanh, what would you say to someone who finds sitting meditation painful or difficult and they struggle with it? And Thich Nhat Hanh said, don't do it anymore. He explained, in the teachings of the Buddha, ease and joy are elements of enlightenment. In life, there's already a lot of suffering. Why do you want to suffer more practicing Buddhism? You practice Buddhism to suffer less, right? He said the Buddha's a happy person. When the Buddha sits, he sits happily. When he walks happily. Why would I want to do it differently than the Buddha? Now, Thich Nhat Hanh's vision of mindfulness is not just for the benefit of the individual. Interbeing, the connectedness of all beings, is a foundational concept for him. And this concept, of course, has deep resonance for Unitarian Universalism. Our 7th principle is all about interdependence. And Han's concept of interbeing mirrors Dr. King's teaching about how we are all woven into a single garment of destiny. Right? We need each other. We are connected with each other. Thus, he says, when I bring mindfulness and peacefulness into my life, I'm bringing it into the communal life. I'm creating peace that propagates beyond me. He says mindfulness is not a tool. It's not an instrument to get something. It's a path. It's a way of living that brings happiness and freedom and well-being to ourselves and to others. He says happiness and well-being are not an individual matter. We inter-are with all people and all species. We inter-are with all people and all species. And in his later years, he connected this vision of mindfulness, therefore, to care for the planet, weaving it into an ecological vision in response to climate change. In a 2012 Guardian interview, he told journalist Joe Confino, many people suffer deeply and they do not know they suffer. They try to cover up their suffering by being busy. Many people get sick today because they're alienated from Mother Earth. He said, you carry Mother Earth within you. She's not outside of you. Mother Earth is not just your environment. In that insight of interbeing, it is possible to have real communication with the earth, which he calls the highest form of prayer. In that kind of relationship, he says, you have enough love, enough strength, enough awakening to change your life. And he concluded, the healing of the people should go together with the healing of the earth. This kind of enlightenment is very crucial to collective awakening. Thich Nhat Hanh died in January of this year as one of the most revered spiritual leaders of our times. His legacy of peace and compassion for all beings continues to spread throughout the world. If you're interested in engaging more with Thich Nhat Hanh's practices, his book, The Miracle of Mindfulness, is short, it is accessible, it is readily available, and it contains many practical exercises. Our UUI meditation group incorporates some basic mindfulness ideas into our daily meditations. You can join us Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. or 9:30 on Sunday mornings. Or you can check out the website for Plum Village. I invite all of us, however we do so, to take a moment to breathe today, to be open to the ordinary joys that are going on around us in our present moment, in the now, to feel the earth under our bodies and to connect with gratitude to our Mother Earth. Let us dedicate some part of our day to the cultivation of greater peace and compassion in our hearts, recognizing that we are all connected, and breathing that peace and compassion into our bodies and then back out into the world that needs it. Blessed be, and amen.